Welcome to Don't Check It Up, the podcast where we help students and families navigate the wild journey of the college search and applying to colleges without breaking a sweat. I'm your host, Chuck, and today I get to interview someone who is quite famous in my world, one of my fellow independent educational consultants, Dr. Stephen Antonoff. Steve, welcome to the Don't Chuck It Up show.
Thank you very much for those kind words.
I would go through all of your accolades, but I don't know what all you would like me to highlight. So you're an independent educational consultant. You're a former Dean of Admissions, Financial Aid, Executive Director of Admissions and Student Affairs. You've done quite a bit of work at the University of Denver, where you also received your master's and your PhD. And you really have been in this world of admissions and college consulting for, I would say, the vast majority of your life, if I'm not correct. I mean, like, this has been your career.
It is true. I became a independent educational consultant in '81, and it's been whatever it's been, 40 or 50 years of excitement. So thanks for mentioning those things.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are not independent educational consultants, Steve also acts as an instructor, as a mentor. He's been a mentor for me and a colleague and a friend, and we'll talk about some of the things that he has written about later in the show. But Steve, you've been fighting the good fight in college admissions and higher education for quite some time now.
With colleagues like you, we're together in a goal to try to make the college admissions process as painless and as positive as we can.
We really do try, Steve, and as you and I both know, that it is quite the uphill battle. I'm happy to join this fight with you. So let's talk about what's going on now. You know, we're in the middle of 2026 as we're recording this. So as you look back and think, what are some of the most common mistakes that you think families are making as they are starting this whole college search process?
I think, Chuck, that one of the mistakes that families make is to try to make the process orderly and rational. It's okay to have a process that's messy and that's not particularly rational. And so I think families that come into it think that there should be a really smooth path. You know what you want to major in, and you have some idea of what you want to go into and where you want to study and all of that. So I guess the first mistake I would talk about is to try to get over that and be okay with a process that can be disorganized and a process that clearly has some peaks and lots of valleys. The other common mistake that I think of immediately is being too quick to eliminate colleges on the basis of size. 75% of degree-granting colleges in the U.S. have enrollments under 5,000. So when someone eliminates 2/3 of colleges right off the bat,
right,
they still have plenty of choices. There's plenty of great schools in that other 25%. But I do believe that to eliminate those, and oftentimes I feel eliminating smaller schools without really understanding their purpose in higher education and why they might be more attractive than you think. So those are two things that come to mind immediately when I think about early mistakes in the college planning process.
I can't agree more, and it's always frustrating, especially for your second point of looking at smaller colleges. Students will be like, well, but that's, not that much bigger than my high school, or, that's someplace that I'm worried that I won't have enough opportunities. And yet we go into my next thought, which is talking about prestige and rankings and this huge infatuation. So the students and the families who want to eliminate the small schools, they're fine though if it's one of the quote unquote highly ranked or T20 type institutions, which to me is a conflict within itself. So how has this role of prestige really changed as you've been through this profession over the last several decades?
Um, it hasn't changed as much as one would think. I feel like there's always been a desire to go to a prestigious college. What I think has changed is that the sense of which colleges are prestigious has narrowed during a time when it should have expanded.
Mm-hmm.
Like you, I spend several months a year visiting colleges, and it's amazing to me the quality of colleges, and yet the perception of quality
Yeah.
has not changed very much, and that's a shame. It truly is a shame. Sometimes when I talk to students and try to make a case for a school that might be in the top 15% as opposed to the top 10%, it's like, I'll never get a job. I'll never be successful. Um, I sometimes remind students to think about the best high school or the most or the high school in their community that's the most prestigious.
Mm-hmm.
Are the students that go there the best students in the community? Are they the only ones that are going to get into successful colleges? No, that isn't the case. So prestige. The other thing that I want to say about prestige is prestige simplifies the college search
Yes.
in a negative way. Um, but it's much easier to say, look, I'm only going to look at these 20 schools.
Mm-hmm.
That eliminates 3,800 right off the top. So it simplifies, and simplifies in a way that is hazardous
Mm-hmm.
to finding a good fit.
Yeah, I couldn't say that any better. And I try and give them the numbers and think about there's a really big trend on social media. We need to look at the T20, so the top 20 colleges and universities in the United States by whatever ranking list you want to use. And I said, numerically speaking, you're looking at the top 1%, which means you are ignoring 99% of your options. I'm going, really? You want to only look at one new outfit and ignore 99 others? Like, it's just, or you only want to try on one pair of shoes in a shoe store and just ignore everything else that's on the wall? Oh, I don't understand this. And I've looked back through the lists and the rankings, and those lists have changed over the last 20, 30 years. And there are schools that were on them 20, 30 years ago that are not anymore. And I don't think the colleges have gotten any worse. I think how the rankings and how this perception of prestige has changed. So therefore the list has changed that way. But man, as you said, they think that if they don't go to one of these top institutions, they're never going to have a job, they're never going to be successful, and they're going to be sleeping on mom and dad's couch for the rest of their life. And it frustrates me. It really does.
It frustrates me too, but I think we have to fight the good fight. I think we have to share what we have learned about the quality of colleges, and it's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
It's an uphill battle, but our colleagues in school counseling and our colleagues as independent educational consultants have to keep working at this. We have to keep making the case for these quality institutions that are not at the top of the list. You know, yeah, I used to kind of dismiss when a family would talk about U.S. news. I would sort of dismiss it, say, well, that's you shouldn't use it, and all of that. But now I find the best strategy is by sharing with families what U.S. news is really measuring,
Yes.
and then comparing that with what that student and that family wants. You know, what percent, you would probably know more than I know, but there's 20 or 30% of the US news rankings are perceptions of quality by I think it's college presidents or something.
Yes. And
Um,
deans of admissions, like college presidents and deans of admissions.
and deans of admissions who really, I mean, one of the reasons I got into this work after being a dean of admissions at the University of Denver was that I didn't know colleges.
Yeah.
I knew when I was at the University of Denver, I knew obviously DU, I knew the schools that were competitive to DU.
Right.
And as far as other schools, if I like the dean of admission, I like the school. You know, it was totally nonsense.
Yeah.
So we have a big task, and podcasts like yours help to um, at least encourage, if not convince, families to look beyond just prestige.
You almost said the name of Lauren Pope's first book, but we'll get there later in the show as well. But you reminded me of the U.S. News and World Report survey back when I was a new admissions counselor. I was working at Lawrence University, and Steve Syverson at the time was the dean of admissions, and he had received the email from U.S. News and World Report where he had to log in, and it literally was a list of colleges and universities, and he had to click, very satisfied or not satisfied or whatever the ranking was back then. And there were lots of them that he just had to go down the middle and put neutral because he's like, I don't have an opinion. And he said to me, he said, Chuck, what do I do with my competitor schools? Do I say that I really like them because I think they're awesome and they are similar to us and therefore we will look better? Or do I say that they're horrible because I am trying to push them down in the rankings so that we go up? And he goes, neither answer feels correct. And it feels disingenuous. And it doesn't feel like, because back then, it didn't matter what college we worked at. We were all trying to find schools for these students. Like, I was happy to refer a kid to another college if I felt that that college was going to be a better fit for them than then coming to my college. And so I watched Steve just get frustrated by it. And I know that he's like, but we have to fill it out, because if we don't fill it out, then people are going to go, why didn't you fill it out? So yeah, it's a messy, messy thing. It's here to stay probably for the rest of our time in higher education, but it's something that people need to be aware of as to how the sausage is made, so to speak.
Yeah. And you may have heard me say this at some other time, but it's interesting in our society what we rank and what we don't rank. We rank almost everything, actually. We rank toasters, and we rank foods and restaurants, and we rank everything. We don't rank churches.
Mm.
No, we don't rank churches because, good grief, way too complex. How can you compare this religion to that religion? How can you compare this group of this community of people to that community? My feeling is that higher education is just as complex.
Yeah.
But yet, U.S. News got into the rating business, 40 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
They sell zillions of not only, they still sell magazines in addition to their virtual presence. but it's just interesting that we're trying to compare a liberal arts and sciences college or a college that has a conservatory of music against a college that has its primary goal of research or its primary goal of um, uh, uh, serving a particular sort of student. And when we put all of them together, and even with the U.S. News categories,
Mm-hmm.
national and liberal arts and region, even with those subcategories, it's still ranking something that is in many ways to me unrankable.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. But I think, unfortunately, Pandora's box has been opened, and I don't think it can get put back in. So it's like, yeah, it's like, which is better for you, a Tesla or a Toyota? They both have four wheels and get you from point A to point B, but some people really want a Tesla, and other people are really happy with the Toyota. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And if you can't afford a Tesla,
right,
or if you can afford a Tesla and feel that value is really important, you may not pick the car that is better known
right,
or seemingly um, uh, a better car to have.
right. According to certain people and some others, some not. So
Right,
it really
right,
depends.
right.
So when you're talking to families and people that are really just starting this process, what does a good college list look like? And how do families know if they've built a good one?
Um, I think there are several things to consider here. Um, a good list of colleges contains schools that there's a solid rationale for inclusion.
Mm,
That there's been some significant thought behind why that school is on the list. Maybe it's on the list because of merit money potential. Maybe it's on the list because it's close to home. So that's one of the things that I think is really important. Um, a good list is also a good list
mm,
if the student and the family have considered the trade-offs involved. Um, if they've considered, okay, this school is a little bit big for what I want,
mhm,
but the value is such that it belongs. It belongs on the list. So if you've considered the trade-offs carefully, then it's a good list. And I feel like another factor that I always consider to be important when I'm talking to students and families is, have you pushed the envelope a little bit? If you're only looking at small colleges, maybe you should take a look at a medium or large size.
mhm,
If you're only looking at schools in a particular geographic area, maybe to push that envelope a little bit. So those are uh, uh, some of the things that I think about when I am working with a family about a list of colleges. It's less significant to me how long the list is, although I think these days some lists have become yeah, completely out of hand. But I'm less concerned with the number than I am with the rationale, the pushing of the envelope, and the consideration of trade-offs.
mhm. I love all those points. My only worry is that some of the students that I've been meeting with have said, well, I just automatically need to apply to all of the Ivies. And the justification is, well, it's the Ivies, so I should be applying. How do you
Yeah.
how do you handle students and families that come with that type of, and it may not be the Ivies, maybe it's some other, group of schools that for the only reason why they want to apply to them is because it's a certain group of schools. So it's the SEC or it's all of the UC campuses or whatever it may be.
Well, it's just a mistake. I mean, anyone who knows colleges knows that the student at Columbia is much, much different than the student at Dartmouth.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, they both are in the Ivy League Athletic Conference. And let's remember that the Ivy League began as an athletic conference.
Yep.
Those are wonderful schools. They're tremendous. They're resource rich. They're tremendous. But there's no way that Washington University could be in the Ivy League because they were too far away to play football. And there's no way that Carleton College could be in the Ivy League because it was too small, too far and too small to be able to play football. So people can come in and they can say we're only going to look at this athletic league or this this other group of colleges, but they're really shortchanging. They're spending, I guess what I would say is they're spending a lot of time trying to make good applications for a group of schools that are so different that they probably are missing some opportunities if they just had expanded the base a bit.
And probably have significant less rejection if they have a little bit different mix on their plate, so to speak. So,
indeed.
We all want them to get the accept packets. We want kids to get excited about college. If a kid gets a 99% rejection, it's not very fun. Like, we want them to get, a lot more acceptances if possible. Anyway, I digress. So, what do you wish that parents understood about this process? What do you think that parents are not really understanding as they head into the college search or the application process, depending upon where they are?
Such a good question, as are all of the questions that you've asked me. One thing I have already mentioned that I think it would be good for parents to understand is that the quality of educational institutions has increased so much in the last few decades, truly. And I don't say it because saying it may get somebody off of just applying to the Ivies. I say it because it's true. I say it because I, like you, have been on these campuses and seen incredible faculty members, incredible student opportunities, incredible research opportunities. So that's something that I would highlight again. The next thing that I think of in terms of parents understanding, I wish they understood that it's important to start the college planning process really thinking about their student.
Yeah.
Thinking about colleges comes next, but spend time thinking about your student.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of a learner is your student? What sort of a community member? Is your student collaborative? How easy is it for that student to get to know others? So I wish that parents would spend a little bit more time, and it doesn't have to be weeks, but spend a little bit more time thinking about who their student is, and they know who their student is. They've lived with that student for a decade and a half or more. They know these things. And so when you can get them to really focus on those things, then I think sometimes finding a college that fits those characteristics comes a little bit more quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like there's too much outward focus on what colleges do we like or what colleges do I want my kid to apply to, and not an understanding of, well, where would my student do well and where would my student really thrive and grow and be challenged and supported. You know, I love asking my parents questions about, like, you know, what type of college environment would you put them in if you could put them anywhere, you know, real or imaginary? What type of place? Would it be urban or rural? Would it be a project-based type experience, or would it be more of a lecture-based type of experience? Would you want your student to know your professors, or are they okay not? I mean, there's so many different qualities and characteristics, but it really comes out to, you know, if your goal is the student to get a great education, we have to figure out what type of education your student will do best in.
Well, your families are lucky that you're asking those questions, because sadly they're not asked enough.
Yes. Well, I want to turn to a few resources and ideas that I've come up with. So one of the people that influenced me from literally the 90s was Lauren Pope. I know that you overlapped with him time-wise. Did you interact with Lauren a whole lot?
Not a whole lot, but certainly I had the pleasure of interacting with him early on in the Colleges That Change Lives life.
Yeah, and I mean, he completely rocked the world in the 90s when he wrote the book Looking Beyond the Ivy League. And this was really encouraging families to, you know, he was an educational advisor similar to what we were doing. He was a early version of it, and writing for the New York Times, and families were asking him, you know, how do we get into the Ivies? How do we get into the Ivies? And his retort was, I'm going to write a book that's telling you look beyond the Ivy League, which was madly successful, probably more so than he had anticipated. And then they came back to him and said, so where do we look when we look beyond the Ivy League? And his next book was The Colleges That Changed Lives. This is not the original version. This is a revised version, but you obviously and I have experienced the colleges that changed lives. I'm a graduate of one of them. And that book came out right as I was starting my first year at Lawrence. It was when that book came out, and I read the chapter and I was like, oh my gosh, Lauren actually gets it. He gets what at least my institution, he gets what my school was all about. I was so excited. So what do you think Lauren and some of the early college counselors from our profession would think about the college admissions landscape today? Like, what's going on now in 2026?
Yeah. Well, the good news is that Lauren's work continues.
Mm-hmm.
That amongst school-based counselors, independent educational consultants, parent groups, people are still talking about the colleges that change lives. So his contribution is significant and continues to be significant.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in terms of what would Lauren think of the landscape today and his work, I think he would be a bit disappointed that there are a lot of people that think only the colleges that are in the Colleges That Change Lives are in fact colleges that change lives. You know, I think his intent early on was to write a book profiling a certain group of schools and make them examples
Yes.
of dozens and perhaps hundreds of other schools that are similar. So
Yeah.
I think that would be a little bit disappointing to Lauren, who cared so much about the value of the interactive potential of small, caring, human, kind colleges. Um, I think he would also be very happy with how liberal arts and sciences colleges have flourished.
Mhm.
I feel like, um, uh, as we look at the landscape of colleges, it's remarkable, how many leaders, how in lots of different fields have come from the liberal arts.
Mhm.
Um, and I think the emphasis that those colleges have on critical thinking and communicating and those kinds of things, I think he would be pleased with how leaders of liberal arts and sciences colleges have managed themselves over the years. I think the last thing I would say about that is I think that he would, at this point, be touting the value of liberal arts colleges in an age of AI.
Yes.
I think he would be saying that in our AI world, that the ability to interpret, the ability to evaluate, the ability to connect ideas and to connect people, all of the traits of the schools that he promoted, that those schools in an age of AI are schools that families ought to be considering.
I can't agree with that more. Like, this was a conversation that I've had with several of my friends and colleagues who have graduated from liberal arts colleges. AI is a marvelous tool, and I use the tool on a daily basis. It makes my work more efficient, more effective, but I have to be a critical thinker and look at the results and go, do those results make sense? Because even AI has a little disclaimer on the very bottom that says, please make sure you check the results because, it's not always perfect or something like that. And I have caught AI and I have literally responded to it and I said, you included this, which I don't agree. And then it'll say, oh, oops, I made a mistake. And I was like, aha, see? So it does take a critical mind, and to understand the world is very complex and multidimensional. And AI is giving you one particular slice of things. And if you can't figure out how to learn it, unlearn it, and relearn it, you're going to be outsmarted by AI. So you have to use it, but be critical with it. It's a powerful tool, but it also does not have all the power in the world. The person who runs it is the one who has the power to understand it and acknowledge it and read it. And I agree with you that liberal arts students, regardless of which liberal arts type of institution you go to, I don't think there's the best liberal arts institution, but a liberal arts thinker is going to be someone who is going to work well in the age of AI.
Yeah, is so well stated. It's like, why would you use AI for your essay? I mean, the point of essays is to reveal feelings, to reveal emotions. AI has neither of those things. And so you're right. There's tremendous value in using AI. There's going to be lots and lots of changes in our society because of AI. But when we think about it from a college planning perspective, we really have to think about, where are you going to go where are you going to be educated that's going to allow you to be effective in the world of AI?
Yeah.
And there's lots of places where you can where you can do that, but the liberal arts and sciences base is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Wanted to take a little bit of time and hype up some of the work that you have produced in our world of independent educational consulting and college consulting. So for students and parents who are listening, who are just going, I really would love to work with an independent educational consultant, but Steve and Chuck are just way too busy and it's hard to get a hold of. Well, Steve has created some amazing resources to help people. I think the one that families need to pick up the most would be College Match, and I have the most recent version. So College Match, really, you created a step-by-step workbook in a way to help students and families reflect on this process and get them through it. So this is really great, as you called it, a blueprint for choosing the best school for you. What, and this is several editions now. What made you create this?
Um, you know, well, what made me create it was there was nothing like it. And what I really wanted to do 35 years ago when that book was first published was to share what I did with my students so that lots more people could know what I do and what my process is.
Mm-hmm.
And still to this day, essentially, if someone's working with me, they are going through the steps that are in College Match, learning about themselves, how to research colleges, how to build a list effectively, what to think about in essays. So that was the reason for the book, and I think it's, if I might say, its success over the years suggests that it's still it's still valuable. And
Absolutely.
since you're nice enough to mention it, the new edition is coming out within the next couple of months, and the new edition is going to be a larger size, so it's
Oh,
going to be easier to do the worksheets and that sort of thing.
I was gonna say this version is already a decent size. Like, I mean, this is a good version right
The
here.
new one is 8.5 by 11, and so it's a little bit bigger.
And I love that you do that. And then you also have the companion website, schoolbuff.com. And there will be a link to that in the show notes for people to be able to get to that website. But that is also a resource that I use with each and every one of my students. We use the self-survey for the college bound to help them understand themselves and where they're at in their life quest as a teenager. So collegebuff.com is a great resource. I also love that you started doing a lot of the work that we claim that AI does. You started this a long time ago with creating College Finder. So College Finder is really pre-AI, and I think better than AI because it's based off a lot of the journeys that you've done and collaborating with colleagues who have done these visits. But this is literally, folks, a book of lists of colleges and looking at colleges from a wide different perspectives and virtues and characteristics and qualities and majors and all sorts of different things. So it is a hefty book. This is a lot. I don't know how many hundreds of lists you put together in here, but this is 5th edition. How do you put this all together? This is hundreds of lists, Steve.
Well, thank you for again for touting it and speaking about it. The College Finder is a testament to my poor memory. When I left the University of Denver and started visiting colleges, I was always forgetting what was the college that where there were so many people in fraternities. What were the colleges that I felt were good values? What were the colleges where so many of my students were telling me that the psychology department, excuse me, was particularly strong? So I started collecting lists, and the result, after many years and 5 editions, is there are 1,200 lists in that book, and as you were kind enough to note, about a third of the lists are are from counselors. Um, uh, uh, we This is probably the most the most input that counselors have in the process is answering. We had over 1,000 counselors that responded to our surveys. So there are many, as I say, a third of the lists that are, these are what counselors feel are are good value schools. These are counselors' feelings about schools that are underrated, or feelings about schools that are overrated. So it's evolved over the years. My hope is one of these days to have an online version of the College Finder. It's gotten to be, as you say, quite the tome, but we're taking it one step at a time.
I think instead of AI, we're going to have the Antonoff intelligence system.
Oh, yes.
I mean, you already have your own fan club. You already have the Fantonoffs, so you're already getting up there.
There's the Fantonoffs could meet in a closet. Believe me.
I
Um,
I would argue that point. I would argue that point. As a member of the Fantonoff Club myself, I would argue that point. And I think for my fellow independent educational consultants that tune in to my podcast and YouTube, we obviously know your work from a very different perspective, because you have created resources for our community that go way above and beyond. You've created a student of colleges, and this is something that you taught me many, many years ago, is as independent educational consultants, we will never know every college out there at the most. It's just ever evolving, ever changing. I hit my 250th college and university visit this summer. I was actually with you on a college campus when I hit that 250 mark. You're probably well beyond that number. And you've created a student of colleges, and then also the book that goes with that, A Student of Colleges, a Guide for IECs. It's an incredible resource for those of us who are independent educational consultants or people who have an interest in becoming an independent educational consultant. Both the website and the book are a wonderful resource for our community, which, we have training out there, but there isn't really a degree in becoming an independent educational consultant. So you really have supplemented and written a lot of the material that would be in that degree through your book and through your website.
Again, thank you for mentioning it. I do want to say that I am working on the second edition of that. I encourage my colleagues who have found things in the book that are helpful to tell me that, and things that perhaps could use a spiffing up to also share that. And my hope is that the second edition will not only reflect the new issues that we face as consultants, but be more thorough in some topics that didn't get as much coverage in the first edition.
Well, on behalf of many of the IECs out there, we are very appreciative of all the information that you provide from your viewpoint and the gathering of information from our many, many esteemed IEC colleagues from around the country and around the world, to make sure that the next batch of independent educational consultants are ready to go out there, help families and students, and make a difference in higher education. So it's amazing that you provide us with all these resources. Um, so at this stage in the podcast, I always love to give my guests a soapbox moment. And I want you to be able to take a few minutes to share whatever message you want with my listeners. The vast majority of my listeners are of parent age. Many of them are high school counselors, independent educational consultants, or concerned parents that are tuning in to try and not chuck it up, as I say. So what are some words of wisdom from Dr. Stephen Antonoff that you would like to share?
Well, I'm not sure that they are words of wisdom. In fact, they likely are not. But my main message is to take time to find a good match college. It's not going to come easily. I don't care how many resources you have. I don't care what the expertise might be of your counselor, but take the time to really think about yourself, to think about what you want in a college, to think about all of the aspects of life planning that very much are part of what good college planning is. As you've said many times, Chuck, every student has lots of good choices. There are just so many. There's so many good options, but it does take time. It takes the effort of the student. It takes the effort of the parent. It certainly takes the effort of whether it's a school-based counselor or an independent counselor to guide that process. But with the time, you'll find great matches.
Very well said. As one of my mantras is, this is a marathon, not a sprint. So enjoy the run, because we're going to be on the course for a while. And we don't know where it's going to turn. Unfortunately, I don't have a map. I wish I did. Well, from the bottom of my heart, as one of your fans, you have been an incredible mentor and educator and resource for myself over the years. I am so extremely appreciative of you coming and being a guest on the Don't Chuck It Up show. This has been a highlight of my nearly 2 years of doing this show now, so I appreciate you so thoroughly for being here.
You're very gracious, and I am grateful. I'm grateful to you for doing this podcast and making information available. And before we end, I do want to extend my congratulations to you on getting one of the highest awards in our profession. Very well deserved. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.
Thank you so much. Coming from you, that means a great deal, as someone who is literally one of the people that keeps our profession going and has really created this into a marvelous career where we get to change and help young people find their futures in higher education and life after high school. So again, appreciative of everything that you do, Steve.
Thank you very much, Chuck.
Well, thanks for listening to Don't Chuck It Up. If today's episode was helpful, be sure to subscribe and share it with the family navigating the college search or the application process. I'll be back next week with more tips and tricks. Until then, remember, don't chuck it up.